He became one of the most successful artists to emerge from the franchise when he won the 11th season of American Idol. He was not only an artist who had a sound that was perfect for the radio, but he also had a loyal fanbase and a breakthrough single called Home, which would eventually become one of the most successful singles in the history of Idol. However, in the background, while his fame continued to increase and possibilities presented themselves in an increasing number, a legal dispute that had been ongoing for several years was silently brewing between the singer and one of the show's main producers. At long last, the resolution of the disagreement has been reached. The two parties have come to an agreement that is mutually beneficial, and this outcome came as a surprise. The resolution was reached after a period of over 10 years, during which time there were hearings, bankruptcies, hard talks, and files. There is a reason for the timing of the settlement. It is not a coincidence. The relaunch of American Idol, which is set to occur on ABC, is generating a great deal of attention. As the production company that has been linked with the show for a long time, 19 Entertainment is working to bring an end to the show's previous chapters before beginning new ones. The unsolved legal drama in which Phillips was involved was one of the most important, and it brought up some uncomfortable issues regarding the contracts that were offered to contestants on the show Idol and the power dynamics that are in place for their careers after the show. On this day, the two parties are getting ready to file a stipulation in court that would officially validate the terms of their agreement. This highly contentious matter, which was formerly full of burning emotions, will come to a conclusion with a peaceful closure instead of a victory lap that is easily seen by others, as none of the particulars will be published publicly. However, the story of the way in which events transpired continues to be one of the most illuminating and cautionary chapters in the history of American Idol. The harsh truths of life confront a promising young individual. In the year 2012, Phillip Phillips competed in American Idol. He was a soft-spoken vocalist hailing from the state of Georgia, and he possessed a gravel-rich voice in addition to a flair for reinterpretation. He gained the favor of the judges and transformed well-known songs week after week, gradually building up momentum that would eventually take him to the finale. When he was the victor of Season 11, the music industry regarded him as a contemporary folk-pop musician who was ready to achieve rapid success. However, the celebration was short-lived. Phillips was committed to a series of contracts that were strictly controlled and included recording agreements, touring arrangements, and production-related duties, all of which dictated practically every element of his professional life. These contracts were kept out of the public eye. For a long time, participants on American Idol were required to sign these contracts, which were thought to be the norm. These contracts were restricted, profitable for production firms, and difficult for young artists to protest. That was not going to last for much longer. The bombshell of the legal world in 2015. Phillips took a risk in January 2015 that no previous American Idol winner had attempted. He submitted a petition to the California Labor Commissioner in which he charged that 19 Entertainment and its related companies had engaged in manipulation by getting him to accept employment that provided a greater advantage to the corporation than it did to his own career. Phillips referred to the contracts as oppressive, and he argued that they deprived him of the autonomy to make judgments about his own creative process, took away his authority over his finances, and eliminated his capacity to make independent decisions about his professional path. It is his assertion that 19 Entertainment failed to fulfill its fiduciary responsibilities by giving preference to its revenues as opposed to his artistic journey. The statute known as the Talent Agencies Act, which mandates that only licensed talent agents are permitted to get employment for a performer, was the subject of one of the most sensational claims. Phillips put out the argument that 19 Entertainment had been acting in the capacity of an agent without having the required authorization, which essentially constituted an overreach of its legal authority while simultaneously dictating professional decisions. As soon as it was filed, the petition became the focus of attention. It presented a danger to producers of reality television that could lead to the breakdown of agreements that are made after the conclusion of a competition. For the participants, it was an uncommon opportunity to take advantage of a system that had long been seen as impervious to manipulation. The entertainment sector was a keen observer. The far-reaching consequences, a legal approach that carries significant ramifications. The case that Phillips brought up was not solely centered on his own personal grievances. It indicated that there was a larger issue with the manner in which reality television show competitors were handled following the conclusion of their fame on television. The judgment that was made might have been able to restructure the economic model that producers have been depending on for years. This model enabled businesses such as 19 Entertainment to assert ownership over segments of artists' profits, decide on the dates for their tours, and exert control over the decisions that were made about recording. This would have been the case if the Commissioner of Labor had agreed with his position. In an instant, Phillips was no longer only a winner of American Idol, he was also a possible catalyst for industry reform. Producers and television experts were aware that if a single high-profile contestant were to successfully dispute the legality of oversight following the program, additional contestants might follow suit. The disagreement was not just a legal conflict, it became a symbol of the changing power dynamics inside the entertainment industry. A $6 million counterclaim and the complications of bankruptcy. After Fox made the decision to terminate American Idol, 19 Entertainment faced a difficult financial situation and ultimately filed for bankruptcy. However, the process of bankruptcy served to intensify the disagreement rather than bring it to a close. The organization brought a lawsuit against Phillips with a demand for damages in the amount of $6 million. The case was brought about by Phillips' failure to provide compensation for the money that was properly owed to 19 Entertainment, as well as his failure to fulfill a number of contractual commitments. Phillips was put in a hazardous situation as a result of this aggressive counterattack, which forced him to defend against a significant financial claim while simultaneously continuing to pursue his challenge to the Talent Agencies Act. However, the bankruptcy court declined to make a decision about the fundamental issue. The judge came to the conclusion that the question of whether or not the Talent Agencies Act had been violated should be determined by the Labor Commissioner and not by the bankruptcy system. Therefore, the legal impasse continued to persist, suspended in a state of limbo of sorts. There was no resolution to the allegations that were put out by Phillips, and the counterclaims that were put forth by 19 Entertainment continued to linger, unable to completely move until the underlying license matter was decided. Both parties were at an impasse, and the industry was aware that the deadlock could not continue indefinitely. During this time, American Idol is getting ready for a reinvention. American Idol was eventually able to find a new home on ABC, after it was cancelled by Fox. However, prior to the relaunch, 19 Entertainment was required to resolve unresolved legal difficulties that risked eclipsing the reboot. The unsolved conflict with Phillip Phillips is a significant challenge. Adding to the complexity of the situation, 19 Entertainment had lately come to a separate agreement with Fremantle Media Limited, yet another significant producer for the Idol franchise. This agreement made it easier for the show to be brought back to life, yet it also raised the pressure to find a resolution for the other disagreements that had not yet been settled. In order to reboot, a fresh start was necessary. That required him to come to some sort of resolution with Phillips. An agreement comes to fruition without any fuss. Both parties acknowledged that it was necessary to continue moving forward as the prospect of waiting for the decision from the Labor Commissioner became more and more unrealistic. El Paso de los Años continuó. There had been developments in the music industry. Phillips have kept releasing music on their own without any outside assistance. 19 Entertainment had passed to new owners and was heading in a new path. It was the perfect moment. Settlement negotiations started to pick up momentum as a result of the implementation of new company strategies and the upcoming relaunch of American Idol. What was once a harsh and antagonistic struggle had become something that was more pragmatic. The potential for the Labor Commissioner to reach a conclusion that takes a long time could result in negative consequences for the public. A dispute in bankruptcy court may result in the depletion of resources. Furthermore, neither of the parties was interested in having the public narrative, reality show winner versus producer, brought back to life during a significant comeback on television. The two parties therefore started to negotiate the terms of an agreement in a discreet and professional manner. The agreement: information that we possess and information that we lack. As reported by The Hollywood Reporter, Phillips and 19 Entertainment have come to an agreement to settle their differences. The particulars will not be revealed. The confidentiality of the information guarantees that no party will be subjected to public scrutiny in the event of any concessions or compromises. On the other hand, the following is known to be true. A written agreement known as a stipulation will be submitted to the court in order to make the settlement official. The description of the resolution as amicable implies that neither party is proclaiming that they have won or placing blame on the other party. Because of the terms of the agreement, 19 Entertainment is able to proceed with the Idol relaunch without having to worry about being involved in a high-profile court battle. Additionally, it eliminates the uncertainty that has previously surrounded Phillips' career, which allows him to continue forging his own path without having to deal with any disputes over contracts that have not been addressed. The conclusion of the conflict, which was initiated by heated charges and posed a danger to industry standards, is unexpectedly peaceful. A retrospective: the significance of this battle. The challenge that Phillips issued to 19 Entertainment is considered to be among the most audacious actions carried out by any participant in the history of American Idol. It is quite uncommon for winners or players from other reality franchises to publicly criticize the contracts that tie them. The reality that has been the subject of a great deal of discussion was brought to the forefront by his petition. Candidates who sign contracts are frequently doing so under terms that provide more advantages to producers than to performers. As a result of Phillips' decision to question that system, a problem that had been the subject of hushed speculation among many people in the business was thrust into the spotlight. His position acted as a warning shot even if he did not make an official declaration. The producers of reality television programs, the music corporations, and the talent managers quietly re-evaluated their methods, recognizing that the participants were no longer content to tolerate power systems that had been in place for decades. The battle that Phillips fought became a symbol of artistic empowerment. It was a reminder that even individuals who are emerging from a television format that is severely restricted may demand fairness. A fresh start, the beginning of a new era for Idol and Phillip Phillips. Both parties are now able to concentrate on the steps that will follow now that the disagreement has been resolved. The settlement allows the show to continue its evolution for a new generation of viewers, which is beneficial for American Idol. The franchise has been continuously reinventing itself. In order to keep its image as an opportunity rather than a cautionary tale, it is important to work through the problems that have occurred in the past. For Phillip Phillips, the settlement gives peace of mind following a prolonged period of uncertainty. He is now able to take back control of his narrative as an artist, unburdened by the weight of lawsuits, petitions, and corporate disagreements. Since his time in the band Idol, he has seen considerable growth, and he has developed a sound that incorporates aspects of modern folk music while still being infused with deep grit. Supporters continue to stand behind his trip, and the conclusion of the legal dispute permits him to proceed with his life without any constraints or unsettled obligations. A battle that was anything but quiet, yet has quietly come to an end. In the final analysis, the settlement is more symbolic than extraordinary. There are no spectacular public pronouncements, no dramatic courtroom moments, and there have not been any monumental decisions that have rewritten the laws of the sector. Resolution that is modest, subtle, and beneficial to all parties is what is present in its place. However, the narrative that is concealed beneath that peaceful conclusion is one of bravery, self-restraint, and the intricate machinery that drives the phenomenon of reality television celebrity. The potential to make changes in the industry existed when Phillip Phillips got involved in the legal dispute. In order to maintain a business model that was directly related to the show's performance, 19 Entertainment engaged in a battle. Both parties were exposed to potential hazards, both parties encountered potential repercussions, and both parties eventually acknowledged the importance of bringing matters to a close. At the point when the parties wrap up their agreement and the court documents are being prepared, an era comes to an end. The journey of Phillips as an artist is ongoing, with his path being influenced by a struggle that lasted for almost a decade. This conflict has formed a part of his identity, but it has not been the defining factor in his life. This chapter concludes not with a revelation, but with a resolution. By itself, that is an accomplishment that is seldom seen in the music industry, which is a sector where fights involving a great deal of money can become drawn-out and painful public spectacles.